Welcome to the Loud Miami Fans Podcast. Loud Miami fan here, Chase Blake. I appreciate you all joining. This is hashtag Let's Get Louder. And on this episode, it's another week down in spring. Not much going on, but there is. There's hot fish on fire, and then there's potentially injured pitchers to review on this episode of the hashtag Let's Get Louder LMF's podcast. Again, I am Loud Miami fan. Feel free to follow me on all social media platforms at Loud Miami fan. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, amazing. Thank you. If you're listening to on Apple or Spotify or your favorite podcasting platform, just give me that subscribe, give me a like, and give me a 5-star rating. Comment all you want. I love hearing from the fans. I love hearing what you want to hear. And let's get this episode going. So, spring training been going on. Some Marlins starting to catch fire at the plate. Some cuts happened as of today, Tuesday, the 12th of March. I'm a little under the weather. I apologize for my voice. I'm fighting a cold, so I'm going to get through this as quickly as possible and as easy as I can. If you're watching on the YouTube, you see me drinking some tea, and that's awesome. You also see me wearing the Let's Get Louder Support Cystic Fibrosis t-shirt, and that is available at intheclutch.com. If you search LMF or Let's Get Louder, the t-shirt will pop up. It's like $25, and some of those proceeds go towards the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation chapter in South Florida. Please buy the shirt, wear it to the ballpark, take a picture with me out there when you see me. And, of course, you can use the coupon code LMF at checkout. That should save you, I believe, 12% off your purchase. So, again, let's start here. Marlins going into camp, you think even without Sandy Alcantara that you have probably the best pitching staff available as far as 1 through 7. Again, that's without Sandy. You were excited to see where Ryan Weathers performs. AJ Puck was moving to a starting role. You wanted to see how he performed. And as of his start the other day, he led the Grapefruit League with 15 strikeouts in 8 1/3 innings. Amazing work by AJ Puck so far this spring. Ryan Weathers also, he's been on fire too in all his starts and appearances. Max Meyer's been good. Jesus Luzardo got a little beat up, our opening day starter, by the Nationals, but that's expected. Ish happens, and it's spring. You just want them to come out healthy. Trevor Rogers yesterday night looked great. He's commanding the ball. But we must talk about Edward Cabrera. Unfortunately, Edward Cabrera is suffering from some shoulder tightness, some shoulder injury maybe. They did an MRI. We don't know what it is. They haven't talked about it. So hopefully he's okay, but he did get scratched from his start the other day, and hopefully more coming out from the team on that. Hopefully he's not injured. Josh Billy and I, that's J Billy Goat on Twitter. Please give him a follow. We host a space every week. There's not a time for it. We just randomly, when we both could get together, talk Marlins baseball as best we can for 45 minutes to an hour. If people join, if people listen, that's great. But we discussed this last night, and we really don't want to make a call on Edward Cabrera because we don't know if he's injured or not injured, or really where he is right now in this process of rehabilitation on the shoulder, or what the MRI said. We just hope he feels good and is better. So that's all I'm going to say really about Eddie. Of course, Braxton Garrett, he was amazing last year. He went through 5 innings most of his starts. They started extending him a little bit after like the 10th start of his, giving him the opportunity. And Braxton Garrett, he's injured as well, or came in injured to camp. So he had a late start. He'll probably start on the disabled list. But there's a plethora of teams suffering from pitching issues right now. Lucas Giolito, injured for this season. He was a free agent signing. Then you hear Garrett Cole on the Yankees suffering from a possible elbow injury. He's getting an MRI, and we'll see what happens there. So, the Marlins have depth, and this is their strength. Their strength is the pitching of this team. So we can't really project the starting lineup or starting rotation, rather, of who it will be there, except for the opening day starter, Jesus Luzardo. I was at a start last Saturday. It was Marlins Fan Day or Member Day at Jupiter at Roger Dean Stadium. Met a lot of the players. It was really fun, good times. But Yuri Perez had to leave the game in the third inning or fourth inning due to a blister on his finger. So that you got to watch. That's the second time he's had issues with that this spring. So really, you got to project right now as Jesus Luzardo is your opening day starter. Yuri Perez will be in there. Trevor Rogers seems to be coming back. He had a late start. They haven't announced if he's going to start on the IL or in the rotation. Edward Cabrera seems to be injured now. You have Max Meyer, who is potentially going to start in AAA, but that may be pushed to the majors as a fifth starter. Ryan Weathers may get a start, and I want to focus on AJ Puck again because he's been lights out this spring. So he's really making his case to be in our starting five rotation, especially with the potential injuries here with Braxton Garrett starting on the disabled list, and now Edward Cabrera could start on the disabled list. That means Puck will be in the 1 through 5, and if he is lights out like he's been so far this spring, again, you can only take so much out of spring. If he is lights out like he's been this spring, well, I hope he continues that in the majors moving forward in the season. And we are just 16 days away from opening day, March 28th at Lone Depot Park. If you live down here in South Florida, you can always take the Bright Line down. You can drive down. If you live in Miami, live close. They're doing this whole Skip It campaign. Please make it out. You're looking at a team that was 87%, the same team as last year. I've been over that multiple times on previous episodes of where we stand as a team, and where we are with our roster. And these guys made the playoffs last year, and they deserve for you to go and celebrate that with them at the start of the season. Of course, if you're out of it by June, I understand not showing up, not making the drive down, but at least for the first 2 months, let's see where it stands. Let everything equal out. It wasn't until mid-May last year that we went over 500 and didn't go back to 500 or under until late August, but then made the jump quickly back over and into finishing the season with 84 wins and the 5th seed, not even the 6th seed. We were the 5th seed in the National League. So take that into consideration. You got great players out there wanting to play, which this is a segue into a player who's not great, who should not be on this team. And I want to review right now my thoughts on Avisail Garcia. I personally hate trashing players on this team. I do it from time to time. There was a catcher a few years ago who I called the trash can because he would strike out, pop up, and he couldn't catch. He'd let balls pass him. And no, I'm not talking about Alfaro. Alfaro was a good dude. I liked Alfaro. Maybe not great at skill, but he was a good dude, and then they liked that. But point being, I hate trashing players. Many think I don't like our right fielders, Jesus Sanchez. That's not true. I really do like Jesus Sanchez. I do favor Brian De La Cruz and Jazz in the outfield, but I do like Jesus Sanchez, and he seems to turn the corner. But the guy I want to discuss right now as we get into the 10-minute mark of this episode, and I want to take a couple minutes on this, is Avisail Garcia. As of 2 days ago, Avisail Garcia had 3 hits this spring. I've watched him live. I've watched him on TV, on MLB TV, on the web casts by Kyle Seeloff, the Marlins announcer. Thank you to Marlins Radio for that. But if you watch Avisail Garcia, you must agree that the dude is washed, and he is Avi Stink Garcia right now. And I say Garcia as Garcia. Get off my team. The guy continuously makes errors in the pitch clock at the plate where he struck out twice this spring training, preseason, if you want to call it, if you will, with me. He struck out twice already on not being ready in the batter's box. And that's just not acceptable at this point in his career. Look, he was with us last spring. Same things were happening. He was with us during the season for some of the time. Yes, he was injured, which was great for the team, his injury. But it's unacceptable for him not to care enough to follow the rules. It's unacceptable for him to be striking out like he is. It is unacceptable for him to only have 3 hits this spring, being he should be fighting for a spot on this roster. Given he's going to make $12.5 million regardless if he's cut or not, maybe he just doesn't care. Maybe he wants to get cut. Maybe he doesn't want to play ball anymore. But the Marlins own the rights to him at $12.5 million this year, $12.5 million next year. That's $25 million plus incentives, if he makes them, would be in the hole. They need to cut him. They need to eat that money. And again, I hate this. I hate having to talk badly about a player in our insignia, a player who's been genuinely nice to me off the field. I know many could say Avi's a prick. I've heard that. I heard he has a bad attitude and whatnot. But all in all, I've had good interactions. Hey, amigo. Hey, Bobby, how you doing? He's really nice to me. And I appreciate that. But as an on-field player or his on-field performance right now, it is horrible. And it's only hurting this team. It is only really handcuffing this team. It is really only him holding a roster position. I would say the 26th out of 26 roster positions hostage. I think they could start with 27, but let's say the 26-man roster. He's holding that position hostage that he has to be on this roster. Look, Vidal Brujan's doing all right. Nick Gordon's doing all right. They also are holding 2 roster spots. So really, if you think about who should make this team right now and who's not making this team right now, as of this morning, it's really sad because Avisail Garcia is holding that roster spot hostage at $12.5 million that this ownership has to pay. And I'm not for paying $12.5 million and benching a guy. I'm just like the ownership. If I'm paying him, if he's on this roster, if he's on this team, he has to be on the field in some way, shape, or form, which only hurts this team. The Marlins had talks with JD Martinez, and they didn't go anywhere. There's hype. I know Peter Pratt of Locked On Marlins is hyping, got to sign JD Martinez. Other fans are as well. And I'm all for the hometown stud coming to play for this team at a decent rate contract. However, Avisail Garcia is blocking that from happening. And I'd much rather Martinez than Garcia. But you're going to have to eat 12.5 plus pay maybe 15. So now you're at $27.5 million for that position. That some fans are not taking into consideration when they're like, JD Martinez will take a home field advantage or hometown discount. It's still, you got to throw Avisail Garcia's money into that because he's the one to get cut. If you look at this roster and how it can be built, he is the only player right now that would be cut as far as position players. As aforementioned, you can't cut Nick Gordon, like the guy. You can't send him down. The same with Vidal Brujan. He has to be on the major league roster. Then you have Xavier Edwards. He's had an injured foot. He's the odd man out right now. He's the first guy down, where he earned his right to be on this team last offseason. And Avisail Garcia is responsible for earning his money. He is responsible for playing up to his hype. He hasn't done it in his first 2 seasons here in Miami, and they signed him to 4 plus an option. He controls his own destiny, and the way he's playing, or by striking out the way he did twice this and only 3 hits, twice this off season or preseason, I should say. He is extremely hurting this team right now. And I think by next week with the final cuts, he should be part of that. Speaking of cuts, and I'll go back to Avisail and how he fits in here. Speaking of cuts, this morning, Troy Johnston, who's performed pretty well this spring, not minus, but he was also injured with his foot, twisting his ankle in the first week and a half in New York, I think it was, or at Tampa, whatever. That was last Thursday. He's played pretty well, minus the injury, and then he had to take a couple days off. But even coming back, he got a few hits. Griffin Conine was also cut. Those two were cut, or part of the cuts this morning. And Griffin Conine, not on the 40-man roster, neither is Troy Johnston. Both should have been picked up in the Rule 5 draft. And I think next season, at least Griff Conine, with Jeff part of the front office here, Griff Conine will be protected, I believe, going into next offseason. But that's neither here nor there. Right now, they both have been cut from the major league camp, assigned back to the minor league camp, so they will no longer be part of spring training. They will go back into their minor league spring training as that started last week. And that sucks because those are two guys who have been playing well, who could have made this roster if there was an open spot, which there's not because Avisail Garcia is holding that hostage. And I understand. If he retires, he doesn't get paid. Look, Kim Ng, for all good she did, for all bad that Jeter did, this was probably the worst. Both of them together signed Avisail Garcia. It was, I think, Kim's first big free agent signing after she was hired on this team. Yes, she made some trades in 2021 when she was hired. I'm just going back to see in my head here. She was hired in 2021. She made some trades, some good ones. Look, Jesus Luzardo's on this team for a half season given up to Oakland Athletics of Starling Marte. He's now obviously with the Mets. Then you have another good move she made was bringing in Brian De La Cruz, who hit 19 home runs last year, and I project him to hit 25 this year. Brian De La Cruz was traded to this team for a half season of Yimi Garcia, who's now on Toronto as of last season. I don't know if his contract's still there. But, those were two good moves. One horrible move was this Avisail Garcia signing. It's just horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible. All around, his first season struggled with injuries, struggled with hitting. Last season, I think he hit one home run. Dude hit 26 home runs in that Mickey Mouse ballpark of Milwaukee in 2021, which earned him the contract going into the strike of 2022 into 2022 in the offseason of 21. So, look, Troy Johnston not making this team. Griff Conine not making this team. Question marks are now on Tristan Gray. Tristan Gray has performed really well, at least at the plate so far this spring, and he's earning a roster spot. I would rather Tristan Gray on this roster than Avisail Garcia or JD Martinez, of course, but it doesn't seem like he's being signed. JD Davis was also released by the Giants. He's now a free agent. He cleared waivers at $6.9 million. He's free to sign with any team at the league minimum of $720 right now. So that's awesome for him. And whoever he signs for is going to be cheap. You'd hope it with the Marlins with his versatility, but look, I don't see them making the move. The roster's full with Avisail Garcia. So he's really holding up this roster and holding it hostage from being as productive as it really can be. And he has to play. If he's going to be on this team, he has to play. He has to be in your open day lineup. He has to be the DH or in the right field. You move Jesus Sanchez to left, DLC becomes the designated hitter. We'll see how they do it. Another thing going into the last couple weeks is, will John Birdie play third base? Will Jake Berger play first base instead of third? They tried that out the other day. He did well. And that's something also to watch the remaining of the spring is how frequently Jake Berger plays first, which spells Josh Bell to be DH if Avisail's on the bench. Again, Avisail has to play, right? So maybe you can't make those moves. Maybe you stick with Jake Berger at third and Josh Bell at first, and Avisail and DH are right with one of the aforementioned De La Cruz or Sanchez being the DH or left fielder. You mix and match. But the point being, Avisail Garcia is holding that spot up So they can't make these changes of putting Birdie at third every game and Josh Bell or Jake Berger getting spelled as the DH/first baseman. And it all relies here on one player being on this roster and hurting this roster right now. And if he was producing, we wouldn't have to have this discussion. I wouldn't have to vent for 12, 13 minutes about it, about Avisail Garcia. I'm not going on a rant trashing the guy. I'm just stating truth. He should not be on this team. He should not be in Major League Baseball at this point. I would take Joey Votto, who happy for him, signed with his hometown Toronto Blue Jays. I would take Joey Votto on this team and him produce 5 home runs this season to 10 home runs this season as a DH, as a bench guy leading this team, than having Avisail Garcia holding up this roster. Unfortunately, it is what it is. So let's get louder, Avisail. Get that bat on fire and do something. Or I have to suggest the team cut him. And it stinks that the team would have to cut him. Again, sorry for Troy Johnston, who's been cut from the Major League squad in the spring. Another guy is Trey Mancini, who's projected now by the Fish on First team. Again, follow at Fish on First and at Fish on First Spaces. Eli Sussman does a great job with his staff of Isaac, Noah, Kevin, Dan. I know I'm forgetting some names here. Alex and Alex. There's Fish on the Minors or Fish on the Farm. Just a bunch of good guys. And they're projecting, and they did an episode on their YouTube channel of projections of where this team will be in the next few weeks. Who's going to start where? And they have Trey Turner even starting at first base in AAA Jacksonville, the Jumbo Shrimp. And he's an odd man out because of Avisail Garcia. Him and Xavier Edwards kind of get screwed over here, especially with that move. As long as John Birdie is on this team. Again, John Birdie's making $3.5 million as a super utility. He's great. We love him. He's great. I don't want him traded. But with the addition of Nick Gordon, that made him expendable. We'll see. We still got time. It's tough to make projections, and that's what we're going to do on next week's episode. Once we see how this roster is formed, I'm going to do some due diligence, and I'm going to do a special episode of projecting division winners, not playoff contenders, but division winners, wild card, and we'll see where my thoughts are when I do more due diligence on the league, taking away just from Miami Marlins talk. That'll be a special edition episode that I'll put out once the rosters are more configured. Orioles look really good right now. I want to throw that out there, right? Baltimore Orioles look really good right now. Young, and they got to get Holiday up some way, shape, or form, as he is one of the top projected players in baseball. Wish we had one of those. But some of the young guys on the 40-man look good. Josh Simpson, let's discuss him real quick. He was coming into spring projected to be one of the starters. Unfortunately, not starting pitchers, but opening day roster starters in the bullpen. Unfortunately, he hasn't had the best performance this spring due to injury. So I think they've shut him down for a little bit due to injury. Another guy to mention here is Tanner Scott, who has not been able to pitch one full inning this spring. He's regressed from his stud closing role last year. Could just be he has to build up to it, but you have 2 weeks to do so now. So Tanner Scott has to get it in his head. Maybe it's the having the baby thing that's bothering him as he is a new father, but he has to get in position to be the closer. Him, Andrew Nardi, a lot is going to fall on them to go set up close. You have Anthony Bender, who's been really good as well this spring. The bullpen could be really nice. A guy who's still not here yet is Huascar Brazoban. He's still having visa issues, so he's not going to start for this on opening day this spring. He last year made it in time for opening day, got in the spring on time, but he's still not part of this roster. As I mentioned, I apologize for my voice, taking a sip of hot tea there for those watching, or if you're listening on your favorite podcast channel. Again, if you're listening on the podcast, please go to YouTube and search hashtag Let's Get Louder. You'll find my channel. Please subscribe. Please watch these episodes, comments. I need subscribers. Gotta hit the 1,000 mark to get paid. Help me get paid, Marlins fans. I know there's only 27 of us. That's a joke. But if you can please go to the YouTube, hashtag Let's Get Louder, type into that search bar. You will find the stream and the channel, and please subscribe to it so I can monetize this. So going into next week, big answers have to happen. I think some of my answers that Josh, Billy, and I talked about in Spaces last night have been answered. One of those being, how long will Troy Johnston be in camp? He has now been cut from the Major League camp. Same with Griffin Conine. Hate to say that. Will Avisail actually make the roster? Chances are yes, but that's something to watch. Will Trey Mancini replace him? It all revolves around where he stands with this team. Will Jake Berger play first or third? Will Josh Bell be the DH? A lot of answers coming, and they're putting in our starting roster more frequently, or what could be projected the opening day lineup. Got to give a shout out to Jazz Chisholm Jr. Jazz looks amazing in center field. Last spring, it was such an issue as it was his first time playing that role. He's spent the time, he's learned it, even with the injury last year of turf toe and his offseason surgery. Jazz looks good in center field, and if he stays healthy, he's going to be the battery of this team. He's going to supercharge this team. Got to give a shout out to newbie, our shortstop, Tim Anderson. He is playing immaculate defense this spring. I've seen it twice in person where he stops in that left side on the outfield grass and just darts it to first, making some great plays. And he hit his first spring training home run to beat the Mets yesterday, 3-11. So got to give a shout out to him. I'm really grateful to have him on our team for only $5 million. Unfortunately, it's only 1 year. Chances are he'll be gone if we're out of it, which we shouldn't be. But if we are at the break, he'll be traded. But I want to give a shout to Tim Anderson and how well he's been in case he hears this, Tim. It's great to have you here. This team can be good, ladies and gentlemen. This team can compete with the best of them. Yes, the Mets have a $300 million plus roster still, even without their two old pitchers. Of course, Kodai Zinga is starting off injured. So that's good for the Marlins. But regardless of injury to another player or another team, you have the Mets in front of you. They still have a $300 million payroll. They have Pete Alonso. He's pretty damn good. You have the Braves, of course, the 6-time division champions, continuing to just rule over the National League East. And you have the Philadelphia Phillies, who were the top wild card and kicked our ass in the playoffs last season. It was good we got the experience, but you are in the toughest division in the National League. It's not wide open like the Central is. And the West is pretty much, on paper, going to be owned by the Dodgers again. Of course, the Padres have a high payroll and talented high payroll and can compete, except they don't really have the pitching to do so. Then you have the defending National League champions in the Arizona Diamondbacks. They've only added. So can the Marlins make a run again at a 500 season? That's what you really want. You want a competitive season, a winning baseball team. Are they able to compete for the World Series? If they get hot late, like the Diamondbacks did, like the Phillies did the year prior, you can compete to the World Series. The west of the American League, of course, has the champs from the last couple years in the Astros and the Rangers. That's a competitive division. But it's all about getting to the hot start. And the Marlins, if you look ahead, not trying to get too far ahead, if you look at their schedule, they start off 3 at home versus Pittsburgh, 3 at home versus the Angels, and then we're off to New York. We face Chicago early. We face the Braves early in April. It's just going to be a tough first month. So we'll know where we stand by the end of May. And that's why I want you to show up at the ballpark March 28th, because that day we're 0-0. We're at the top of the division. We hope to beat the Pirates, who've retooled, and go 1-0. Hopefully we win that series 2-1, 3-0, and you move on. And that's Skip's type of baseball, where you focus on each day and you don't focus on the future. And if they perform like they did in September and early October, no, October 1st, the Marlins and all last season for the first half, we don't have that easy schedule of June again, where you faced Pirates, Kansas City, Oakland Athletics, etc. It's spread out. You gotta win division games. The Nationals are going to be better. You have to win the division games. You got to beat the Mets this year. I think we only won 2 games versus them, maybe one. One was canceled when we were supposed to win because of a stupid rain issue, because they don't know how to grounds crew. The Braves, the Phillies, we beat the Phillies. We owned the season record last year minus the playoffs. We owned the record against them last year, 7-6. The Braves, we didn't. We won 3 games versus the Braves, or 4 games versus the Braves. We won 2 to 3 games versus the Mets. Point being, you got to win your division games, and you got to take care of teams beneath you. And for the first time in a long time, this team that's 87% still here did that for you. I hope and wish Edward Cabrera the best. We want the best for this team. And, we really do have a lot of question marks in that rotation. But on paper, if those question marks can turn into periods, we have a great rotation, even without Sandy Alcantara. We miss you, Sandy. And his leadership is still being found in the dugout of the stadium right now in Jupiter, and will continue to be moving forward. This has been an episode of the #LetsGetLouder podcast. Again, go to intheclutch.com, type into your search bar, Let's Get Louder, purchase the official LMF gear. There's the Pots and Pans t-shirt. Speaking about pots and pans, the Marlins are allowing musical instruments this season into the ballpark. They specifically wrote on their press release, no pots and pans. Who do you think that was a shout out? I live rent-free in the Miami Marlins brass and social media team. Let's get louder, ladies and gentlemen. Follow me at Loud Miami Fan, intheclutch.com. Go purchase our gear. And we'll see you next week on the #LetsGetLouder LMFs podcast. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Let's frickin' go. Go Marlins.